let us fly, dear.
Where, kid?
To the sky, dear.
Oh, you flying machine.
Jump in, Miss Josephine.
Hip-ahoy!
Oh, joy, what a feeling.
Feels go through the ceiling, high.
Hoopla, we fly to the sky so high.
Come, Josephine, in my flying machine, going up. She goes up, she goes. Balance yourself like a bird on a beam in the air. She goes, there she goes. Up, up, a little bit higher. Oh my, the moon is on fire. Come, Josephine, in my flying machine, going up. Hold on, goodbye. Going up, she goes, up she goes. In the air she goes, there she goes. Up, up. Oh, my. Going up, hold on, goodbye. Come, Josephine, in my flying machine, going up. She goes, up she goes. Balance yourself like a bird on a beam in the air. She goes, there she goes. Up, up, a little bit higher. Oh my, the moon is on fire. Come, Josephine, in my flying machine, going up. All on, goodbye. One, two, now we're off, dear.
Oh, you, pretty soft, dear.
Whoa, say, don't hit the moon.
Oh, no, not yet, but soon you for me.
Oh, gee, you're a fly kid.
Not me. I'm a sky kid, gee. I'm up in the air about you for fair.
Come, Josephine, in my flying machine, going up. She goes, up she goes. Balance yourself like a bird on a beam in the air. She goes, there she goes. Up, up, a little bit higher. Oh my, the moon is on fire. Come, Josephine, in my flying machine, going up. All on, goodbye. Going up, she goes, up she goes. In the air she goes, there she goes. Up, up. Oh, my.
Going up?
All right, goodbye.
Come, Josephine, in my flying machine, going up. She goes, up she goes. Balance yourself like a bird on a beam in the air. She goes, there she goes. Up, up, a little bit higher. Oh my, the moon is on fire. Come, Josephine, in my flying machine, going up. All on, goodbye. Oh, say, let us fly, dear.
Where, kid?
To the sky, dear.
Oh, you flying machine.
Jump in, Miss Josephine.
Hip-ahoy!
Oh, joy, what a feeling.
Feels go through the ceiling, high.
Hoopla, we fly to the sky so high.
Come, Josephine, in my flying machine, going up. She goes, up she goes. Balance yourself like a bird on a beam in the air. She goes, there she goes. Up, up, a little bit higher. Oh my, the moon is on fire. Come, Josephine, in my flying machine, going up.
Good day, everyone. I wonder if that song was playing during the countdown. I was under the impression that I muted everything, but maybe it just mutes the microphone. Anyway, I'm John Coleman, and here we are for day 294 of the project, which is our unified curricula here at Apocatastasis, bringing together various sciences such as literature, history, philosophy, languages. And for our full-time enrolled students, we study these topics that we get through here on the broadcast daily in a much deeper way with all sorts of ancillary readings. But the genius of the project, and you can find out more about this work in the description below, you can join us in these daily discussions. The genius, of course, is to bring all of human history into a synoptical presentation over the course of a year. And there are different options. So our full-time students have the option of studying this over several years, in fact. And so you can find out more about this work in progress, indeed, down below. Today we're getting into the Cathedral of Sound. We're looking at music in the 19th century. And we have a short selection from the outline of history, which I'll shortly change over the camera to the document view. And then, of course, we'll begin all together with the poem and then move into a look at musical technology, in particular, the wax cylinder, of which you just heard an example, Come Josephine. And as we move into the announcement section of these daily broadcasts, see if you can remember what major Hollywood film in the past few decades made reference to the song you heard, Come Josephine in My Flying Machine. What movie did that come up in? And I'll tell you after our announcement. Well, to do the announcement properly, we will need our beautiful screen share showing our even more beautiful page here. And we have at the college all sorts of collaborations, and please God, more in the future. The one I bring to your attention and mine today is that of Vandana Rotaria's EJ classes. And Vandana teaches the little children mathematics, not using a calculator, but rather using the old ancient abacus. And the children get to be so proficient at this that they don't even need the machine by the time they're done with Vandana. So she has a very, very rare, even a unique offering when it comes to mathematics. And the genius of the abacus method is that the children truly learn the mathematics and are able to visualize the computations and not rely on the calculator to spit back answers. They know the nuts and bolts of getting the result. And as we scroll through this beautiful website, not only does Vandana specialize in mathematics, but also in cursive handwriting, a dying art, but like many arts, well worth keeping around. And so Vandana has a special summer program teaching this. You can see some before and afters. And she and I did a conversation on this very topic, and it went much longer and much more intricately than I thought it would, because there is a lot tied up with handwriting. Speak of dying arts, forget about cursive. I think handwriting and even that chicken scratch print that most people, even into their adult years, have, is dying out. But we will not let it die out, and we certainly won't let cursive die out. So check that out, and if you have young ones that could benefit from these skills, then we await your contact. And you can see many examples here. There we go. The PDF here is giving various examples of children whose handwriting improved markedly. Well, markedly. I'm not a utilitarian, so I don't know how marketably the handwriting is, but it certainly has been improved markedly. So anyway, check all that out. And with that being said, we now will get to our poem for today. And just like yesterday with architecture, we see the American civilization coming into the fore by the late 19th century. I'm going to argue that it's pretty much destroyed by the end of the First World War. The organic America, the original America, which was developing. I mean, you could argue there was something of that in the Confederacy, but you can clearly discern that there was a true artistic, cultural, linguistic, gustatory in terms of food, architectural civilization that was distinct, called the American, up until the First World War. And then, as I see things, and hope to have the opportunity to elaborate on, between the wars, as we'll say, which is a good folk song, between the wars, the country was effectively hijacked by private interests, and we haven't really had a country since the First World War. And we haven't, more to our point, really had an organic culture. Everything has been piped in from strangers in California and New York City. But there was a hot second when there was a proper American civilization that was discernible, and that's what we looked at yesterday with architecture. The American architects do not contribute very much stylistically until the building materials and technology, like the elevator, really allow that ostentatious idea of the skyscraper to come around, and then you have America's contribution to architecture. Likewise, we'll read this short section. This is section 17, by the way, in the 19th century chapter. Likewise, musically, in terms of the whole scope of music, America doesn't contribute a whole lot. There's certainly a folk tradition, bluegrass. This book, written originally in 1920, still has jazz in quote marks, or ragtime. I mean, there are distinct genres, but where we really leave off here, which is what we're focusing on, is technologically, and it's the invention of the wax cylinder and the gramophone and the record player and so forth. That technological aspect that America really comes to dominate. So creativity-wise, not a whole lot architecturally or musically in the big scope of things, in the context of what classical music was going through in Europe at that time. But technologically, and that footprint, a lot. So there's something to be said there for the American civilization. It's not particularly creative, but you get technology in its hands, and then watch out. Okay, before we get too long in the tooth, we'll get our poem, but of course we need some relaxing music. Well, here, hold on. We're gonna do America, have some of that bluegrass music. The thing with this is, like the Celtic music, it can get a little bit loud sometimes. Let's see. Okay. I can live with this. I hope you can live with this. I'll err on the side of it being too low than too high. Okay. So let's get our poem. And this is by Walt Whitman. And so it is, I Hear America Singing. This is not an American history class today, but I thought on the note just given, why not tap into Walt Whitman, who was a nurse during the American Civil War, and I had some interesting things to note there. He may have left some recollections of that. I seem to recall the Nevins collection on the Civil War. This one here, the 4-volume, made a somewhat regular recourse to Walt Whitman. And of course, poetry is part of the project. Right, 3 poems a reading, 3 poems a reading, 3 poems a reading. So we get through in 1 month 250 poems. Then we start again. Here we go. I hear America singing. I hear America singing the varied carols I hear, those of mechanics, each one singing his as it should be, blithe and strong. The carpenter sitting his as he measures his plank or beam. The mason singing his as he makes ready for work or leaves off work. The boatman singing what belongs to him in his boat. The deckhand singing on the steamboat deck. The shoemaker singing as he sits on his bench. The hatter singing as he stands. The woodcutter's song, the plowboy's on his way in the morning or at the noon intermission or at sundown. The delicious singing of the mother, or of the young wife at work, or of the girl sewing or watching, each singing what belongs to her and to none else. Of the day what belongs to the day, at night, the party of young fellows, robust, friendly, singing with open mouths their strong melodious songs. I Hear America Singing by Walt Whitman. I Hear America Sing. Notice the energy, notice the obsession about work as well. Busyness, right? All of these proper to the American Constitution. All right. So let's see now what H.G. Wells has in store for us as we look at music. And he's going to begin appropriately placing us in the context not just of America or the 19th century, but that of Europe. So we'll get this on the screen here. You can download this freely from the project website down below. And eventually this will be collated into a single document spanning 4 volumes for the 4 seasons, which will include all of our poetry, our history selections from Wells here, as well as Will Durant, as well as ancillary readings in philosophy and art and so forth. So that's a ways off before we get those beautiful leather-bound gold leafed editions, but for the time being we'll just have to do a bit of flipping around. I don't think it'll do us any harm. Okay, so this is section 17. I'm going to just focus this nice and crisp. There we go. And these bookmarks, this is one example, we have many others, are available at our store. So just go to the regular website /shop, and you too can own one of these beautiful ApocatastasisInstitute bookmarks. I don't want to reach across the room here for the others we have, but anyhow, the flow of musical creation that was in progress during the 18th century suffered little let or hindrance throughout the period of this chapter. So that same energy of the 18th century continues into the 19th. We have named Mozart and Beethoven as culminating figures of the 18th century. Beethoven carries us into the 19th, and beside him we must put his contemporary Weber, an experimentalist and innovator of cardinal importance. And a little later, the very considerable figures of Schubert, Mendelssohn, and Schumann. Nor can ignore César Franck's Cathedral of Sound, hence our class title for today, the Cathedral, in the plural, Cathedrals of Sound. Music was now passing more and more out of the domain of royal and noble patronage into the concert hall and the appeal of the suffrages of a specially cultivated public. Side by side with opera, always a public-oriented, popular genre, there was an increasing production of songs and pianoforte pieces for the refined home and of dance music for social gatherings. So this is the age of the obligatory piano. Even if you can't play piano, a middle class will always have a piano in the house, keeping the piano tuner in fine fettle. There was no corresponding advance in religious music after the days of Handel and Bach. You have some great hymnody, but hymnody is hardly at the level of these fellows. But the royal patron was still of importance to the composer of great operas, and the courts of Bavaria and Russia especially were fostering places for the new opera drama and a new concept of the ballet. Of course, you have the music hall coming into its own at this point, going into the 20th century. The music hall, which gives us so much so-called folk music. It's not actually folk music if you know who wrote it. A little bit of trivia there, by the way. If you know the author, it cannot be folk music. But you do have a lot of folk hall songs that nerds who still play that stuff are very interested in, like me. One can trace the music of the century, the broadening interests of the age. Composers began to seek new themes and a new spirit amidst the folk music of the Eastern European and Eastern peoples. And that, of course, is very much to be plugged into the colonialism of the late 19th century. This focus on the East, the Orient, the Orientalists, as Said will eventually palpitate. All of this needs to be seen there. You can see the same focus on the East in poetry, such as that of Yeats, and different Eastern texts, religious texts, spiritual texts that are translated into Western languages at this point. This is all part of that Eastern fad. Chopin utilized Polish, Linsk and Joachim utilized Hungarian sources of inspiration, and Brahms went still further afield to India for material to incorporate with his essentially classical fabric. Wagner was born in 1813 and died in 88. He followed in the footsteps of Weber and broke up the established tradition of opera, dramatized and broadened and expanded the range of instrumental music, charged it with new power and passion. You should definitely check out a lot of these names, but certainly Wagner, as well as Mendelssohn. Later in Russia, Tchaikovsky, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that correct, Mogorsky and Korotkov were to discover new realms of color and delight. Interesting word to use in the context of music is color. Here, in a limited space at our disposal, we can but name the Czech Dvorak and the lively enterprise of Richard Strauss, and the fresh beauty of Debussy. Was it Strauss who did the adaptation of the story of John the Baptist being killed with the Dance of the Seven Veils? Was that Strauss? And of course, you had the Rites of Spring. That was interesting piece there because of some of his deconstruction of music right before the First World War. There's a book that kind of leads with that scandal of what they consider disordered music being put on the stage there. But Strauss, at the same time, I think it was Strauss who did, the scandalous Dance of the Seven Veils, which I think was actually an adaptation of something Oscar Wilde had put out there. I'm of course blanking on all this stuff. So far, America, and this is the last paragraph here, so it's not a long section, had contributed little to great music. What had come from the States, so far as other countries were aware, was either imitative or of a type which was regarded as essentially unimportant, whether it was received with indulgent hilarity or pedantic disapproval. Nobody considered that what was called jazz, or more often merely ragtime, could be more than a transitory fad. It was known to be of Negro in origin, but its New Orleans beginnings were not investigated. And the proposition that these new rhythms could have any bearing, let alone any influence upon musical composition, would have been received with laughter. But there is no room here to trace its development, still less that of modern music in the common sense of the term. The appreciation of this latter and most of its development was a post-war phenomena, and the limits of this work will prevent us from carrying on the history of music and other arts beyond the year 1918. Now, part of the beauty of the project is we can do that. We can speak for the last century. This, I should say, this particular edition that you're looking at is from 1961. So it does have updates through the early atomic age. I think that's the last section here. The version we have on the website, I don't think is the 61 version. Again, all of this will be canonized in an official version when we publish it at ApocatastasisInstitute. But here in the book, they leave off the artistic meditation in 1918. Now, here's where I want to bring the class. Not that the record, the phonographic record, is unimportant. Indeed, the development of the gramophone and radio industries brought music that was once the privilege of a cultivated class into the homes of uncountable millions. So I bring that up, and this is the last sentence on this section, again, to point out not the fecundity of the American artistic soul architecturally yesterday or musically today, but rather the genius of incorporating technology, that once the technology is discovered, Americans really run with it, whether that's the skyscraper or the gramophone. Okay, and again, our bookmarks, let's see, here we go. Oh, where's here we go, here's another one. Our bookmarks are available at our store. Here's another nice scene here of children in the grass. And on the back of these beautiful productions, you have our name, and each one has a different quote here, in this instance from Aristotle, and some great advice, beautiful advice. Enroll today. Okay, so that's again from the Outline of History by H.G. Wells, which forms the historical skeleton of this study. Now we're going to change clothes and take a look at the history of the cylinder phonograph. To do that, we're going to go to a website on our screen share, and we're going to do a tech check while we're here. Okay, I could live with that. Make it a little bit lower though. Now, where is my screen share was canceled? I disagree. There's so many of these buttons here, you get lost, you know. Here, let's try this again. So this is the wax cylinder we're going to look at because I wanted to know more about it. I get the idea of the record with the grooves and everything, but what is this wax cylinder? Well, let's find out. This is Library of Congress. A lot of people don't know this. One of the stated reasons for the federal government in these United States is the encouragement, this is in the Constitution, of the arts and sciences. So if you want to know why does the state maintain something like NPR or museums or public schools, now you know. It's actually part of the mission statement of America. Okay, the phonograph was developed as a result of Thomas Edison's work on two other inventions, the telegraph and the telephone. In 1877, Edison was working on a machine that would transcribe telegraphic messages through indentations on paper tape, which could later be sent over the telegraph repeatedly. This development led Edison to speculate that a telephone message could also be recorded in a similar fashion. He experimented with a diaphragm which had an embossing point and was held against rapidly moving paraffin paper Speaking vibrations were made by making indentations in the paper. Edison later changed the paper to a metal cylinder with tinfoil wrapped around it. The machine had 2 diaphragm and needle units, one for recording and one for playback. When one would speak into a mouthpiece, the sound vibrations would be indented onto the cylinder by the recording needle in a vertical or hill and dale groove pattern. Edison gave a sketch of the machine to his mechanic, John Crucy, to build, which Crucy supposedly did within 30 hours. Edison immediately tested the machine by speaking the nursery rhyme into the mouthpiece. Famously, Mary had a little lamb. To his amazement, the machine played back his words to him. You have to consider the amount of inventions that are happening. The automobile, soon the airplane, right? That was the genesis of that song, Come Josephine in My Flying Machine. By the way, to follow up, what was the movie that Come Josephine featured prominently in? I'll give you 3 seconds to answer. What was the movie? Major Hollywood film. That movie was Titanic. If you watch Titanic, you'll notice they make a few allusions to that song. And in fact, if you watch the outtake scenes, the scenes they filmed but didn't make the final cut, if you watch those, which you can get compilations of online, you'll notice that song, Come Josephine in My Flying Machine, plays a much more prominent role. I think in the film, it's mentioned once or twice on deck. And then when the male character, the Leonardo DiCaprio character, is in the water in the North Atlantic, then the song plays. He kind of sings a few bars of it to her as he's shivering, but it doesn't really make that much sense except as a historical reference, because a lot of the more it was going to be a much more robust presence in the film than it ended up being. So anyway, there you go. And that was the wax cylinder recording. Although it was later stated that the date for this event was the 12th of August in 77, some historians believe that it probably happened several months later, since Edison did not file for a patent until December 24th of that year. Also, the diary of one of Edison's aides, Charles Batchelor, seems to confirm that the phonograph was not constructed until December 4th and finished 2 days later. The patent on the phonograph was issued in February of 78, and the invention was highly original. The only other recorded evidence of such an invention was in a paper by a French scientist, Charles Cros, written on April 18th of 77. There were some differences, however, between the two men's ideas, and Crow's work remains only a theory, since he did not produce a working model for it. Edison, he wasn't pissing on who's the one they say was his nemesis, Tesla, right? When he wasn't pissing on Nikola Tesla and stealing his ideas, took his new invention to the offices of Scientific American in New York City and showed it to the staff there. As the December 77 issue reported, Mr. Thomas A. Edison recently come into this office, placed a little machine on our desk, turned a crank, and the machine inquired as to our health, asked how we liked the phonograph, informed us that it was very well, and bid us a cordial good night. Interest was great, and the invention was reported in several New York newspapers, and later in other American newspapers and magazines. And here are some of the uses that Edison came up with for this. See how many of them have carried over into later technologies of audio capture. Letter writing and all kinds of dictation without the aid of a stenographer. Phonographic books, which will speak to blind people without effort on their part. The teaching of elocution. The reproduction of music. Underlined, 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 bolded. The family record, a registry of sayings, reminiscences, and thus and so by family members in their own voices, and the last words of dying persons. Music boxes and toys. Clocks that should announce in articulate speech the time for going home, going to meals. The preservation of languages by exact reproduction of the manner of pronunciation. Educational purposes we approve here at Apocatastasis, such as preserving the explanations made by a teacher, so that the pupil can refer to them at any moment, and spelling or other lessons place it upon the phonograph for convenience and commit into memory. Connection with the telephone, so as to make that instrument an auxiliary in the transmission of permanent and invaluable records, instead of being the recipient of momentary and fleeting communication. Very prescient, aren't these? Very prescient. I think every single one of them has been realized, and all that before the iPhone. Eventually, the novelty of the invention wore off for the public, and Edison did no further work on the phonograph for a while, concentrating instead on inventing incandescent light bulbs. Stealing from Tesla. All right, so now let's take a look at the wax cylinder. So in the void left by Edison, others moved to improve the phonograph. In 1880, Alexander Graham Bell won the Volta Prize of $1,000, which was nothing to sneeze at in the 19th century, from the French government for his invention of the telephone. The French are also one of those Enlightenment republics that believes the government's job is to encourage inventions and to protect copyright. Bell used his winnings to set up a laboratory to further electrical, and acoustical research, working with his cousin, Chichester A. Bell, a chemical engineer, and Charles Sumner Tainter, a scientist and instrument maker. They made some improvements on Edison's invention, chiefly by using wax in the place of tinfoil, and a floating stylus instead of a rigid needle, which would incise rather than indent the cylinder. A patent was awarded to C. Bell and Tainter on the 4th of May in 86, 10 years after the initial invention. The machine was exhibited to the public as a gramophone. Bell and Tainter had representatives approach Edison to discuss a possible collaboration on the machine, but Edison refused it and determined to improve the phonograph himself. At this point, he had succeeded in making the incandescent lamp and could now resume his work on the phonograph. His initial work, though, closely followed the improvements made by Bell and Tainter, especially in its use of wax cylinders, and was called the new phonograph. The Edison Phonograph Company was formed on the 8th of October 87, and the first wax cylinders Edison used were white and made of creosine, beeswax, and stearic wax. Let's see here. So this is all the business stuff. I kind of want to focus more on the actual technology. Edison increased the entertainment offerings on his cylinders, which by 1892 were made of wax, known among collectors today as brown wax. Although called by this name, the cylinders could range in color from off-white to light tan to dark brown. An announcement at the beginning of the cylinder would typically indicate the title, artist, and company. And we can see an advertisement here, the Edison New Standard Phonograph, $20. How much is $20 in $20? Let's see. $20 in 1898 money. I don't think you can see this on the screen, but we'll see if we can get a calculator. Wow. Okay, so $20 in 1898 is equivalent to the purchasing power, are you ready? Of $774.61 today. So $775 in the past 127 years. The dollar had an average inflation rate of 2.92%. But wow, that's unbelievably high. Between the 1898 and today, producing a cumulative increase in 3,773%. Wow. Well, there you go. There's your paper money. All you people want liquid cash. Well, there you go. So this is, in today's money, this is what, $800. $800. What's $800? I guess that's the same you'd spend if you were to buy one of these telephones outright. Right? Those things without the plans and all, I think work out to something like that. Probably still built by slaves in the 19th century, right? Just like the cell phones are now. The slaves are not seeing the Chinese slaves who make our cell phones. I'm afraid don't see the benefits, that money in their pocket. Standard size cylinders, which tended to be 4 1/4 long and 2.2 in diameter inches, were 50 cents each and typically played at 120 RPMs. A variety of selections were featured on the cylinders, including marches, sentimental ballads, minstrel dialect songs, hymns, comic monologues, and descriptive specialties, which offered sound reenactments of events. The early cylinders had two significant problems. The first was the short length of the cylinders. They could only record for 2 minutes. This necessarily narrowed the field of what could be recorded. The second problem was that no mass method of duplicating cylinders existed. Most often, performers had to repeat their performances when recording in order to amass a quantity of cylinders. This was not only time-consuming, but costly. And then in 1898, there were these large cylinders for $4 that were going. Oh, hold on. Ooh. Okay, so this the original machine was $20. Hold on, look at this. In 1898, he reissues it, right? You see? Louder sound and larger cylinders. So that was retailing not for $20, but for $120. So now we need to see what $120, $25 would cost today. Let's see. Ready? Are you going to buy Edison's new machine? It is $5,000. I'm rounding up ever so slightly, but $5,000 is the cost of Edison's new and improved wax cylinder recorder. So I can't think of any gizmo that's quite going for that and means to have a mass market appeal. The process for mass producing duplicate wax cylinders was put into effect in 1901. The cylinders were molded rather than engraved by a stylus, and a harder wax was used. The process was referred to as gold molded because of a gold vapor given off by gold electrodes used in the process. The submasters were created from the gold master, the master recording, and the cylinders are made from these molds. From a single mold, 120 to 50 cylinders could be produced every day. The new wax used was black in color, and the cylinders were initially called New High-Speed Hard Wax Molded Records, until the name was changed into Gold Molded. By mid-1904, the savings in mass duplication was reflected in the price for the cylinders, which had dropped from $4 to 35 cents each. Beveled ends were made on the cylinders to accommodate titles. And this will be our last paragraph here. A new business phonograph was introduced in 1905. Similar to a standard phonograph, it had alterations to the reproducer and mandrel. The early machines were difficult to use, and their fragility made them prone to failure. Even though improvements were made to the machine over the years, they still cost more than the popular, inexpensive dictaphones put out by Columbia. Electrical motors and controls were later added to the Edison business machine, which improved their performance. and some of the other ones had motors earlier. Okay. So it goes on from there, and there's some great advertisements that you can see that are on the right of the screen here. So, yeah, very cool. The early technology there, something dominated by the Americans. Not too creative in terms of art at this point, but wait till the movies come along, huh? Something you also see Edison involved with early on. Okay, got to change the camera here, and we'll be right as rain to put down the bird. Yeah, so there's music in the 19th century. You can see it's bumping up into some other topics such as technology and capitalism, mass market music, the popularization of music. So quite interesting on that front. Tomorrow, as of this recording, is going to be Friday, which means we're going to be concluding this chapter, this very lengthy chapter on the 19th century. It might be the longest chapter in the book, in fact. And H.G. Wells will have a good synopsis of everything. So buckle up for that. We have a lot to get into as we hop into the 20th century in this project. And by the way, we hit restart on the 31st of August. So it would be so great to have you in class as we make our way through human history, in particular Western history and Western arts and so forth. So take a look and do consider enrolling in Apocatastasis. Take a look at our course catalog. We just published the fall course catalog, a lot of updates and improvements. Take a look at that, please. And maybe we'll catch you in class this September. For now, and presumably into the future, I'm John Coleman, and thanks for hanging out in class today.